and take on f2. And at the end of it all, it would be up, I don't know, at least 2 or is it even 3 pawns?
Yeah, I think we got the majority of it. That was such a beautiful tactic. We've seen that by some of the best players in the world, but so easy to miss because you have to give up your queen and then realize you can sacrifice your rook in the corner, temporarily beating down a full queen. And look at this. Speaking of no queens on the board, queen e2, queen e7. What are we watching here, Benjamin?
We're watching the Speed Chess Championship presented by Coinbase, but this game isn't the most exciting so far. Yeah, pretty boring. Isn't this something that Magnus played in the World Championship match when he wanted to make a draw? Anyway, we've seen knight b7, but this check, to be fair though, Robert, it looks unpleasant for black. White is very easy piece play. The king of f8 is kind of stuck. You can go g6 for the moment, as there's bishop h6 check. Again, we see the knight e5 move, and it's not as easy for Jan to bring his pieces into the game.
I'm with you. I mean, these type of dry openings, they're highly criticized, but it does give Magnus, I think, the edge because Jan prefers a more open board. He is a tactician. He likes to play quickly, but in a position like this, how can you play quickly? Do you play f6 right now? Do you play on the queen side? You can't trade on e5. That much is clear, and he does go f6, but it's not easy to make choices like this as they create weaknesses. e6 square, the f5 square, not an easy position.
Yeah, king of 7. I think he's done a good job crawling out of his passive position. Now perhaps he can move this bishop or move the knight. He still has to bring the light squared bishop into the game. So let's see how he will try to do so. Magnus has more space. We know how he can really be a boa constrictor, right? He can slowly but surely surround his position, tighten the screws. We see g5. I think a nice move by Jan, grabbing some space on the king side. Magnus could take, but that's going to open up the h-file for Jan. And this should be quite fine for black.
But I think g5 was a critical move. It opened up some squares for his pieces because bishop f4 was going to happen regardless. And instead of this, there could have been a white pawn on f5, and that would have just restricted black's pieces. So knight f5 retreat, of course that's a good move, defending the g6 pawn, opening the light square bishop. Jan, he looked like he had a bit of a tough one, and yet he is able to neutralize most of white's advantage.
Yeah, exactly. Knight f5, nice move by Jan. If he gets the opportunity, I think he would love to go g5, kick the knight away, then develop his bishop and go rook e8. And then the position should be quite even as the pawn structure is symmetrical. So let's see what Magnus has to do. I think he has a couple of moves to try to develop an initiative. Now g5 is not possible as it allows knight takes g5 followed by knight takes d5 with a discovery on the king and the knight. So what do you do? Maybe king g7, Robert, but then there's rook ae1 and you threaten to slide into e7.
Moves like rook f1 are so nice because they just create these problems for your opponent. Now, rook a to e1, maybe black has the play to go knight c to e6. Remember, everyone, the knight on f8 came there not just to open up the light square bishop, but to protect the g6 pawn. So rook a to e1, knight to e6 from the c7 square. I feel like black is doing a good job and is a few moves away from being completely stable. Bishop d7, rook e8 after that, and finally, black is coordinated.
Right, so we'll see how Magnus will try to build on his initiative. 96, nice move. All right, it's not easy at all. Yeah, in case it takes, you can just recapture. So I don't see it, Robert. Let's see how Magnus will try to work his magic here. He's again down on the clock. Jan is always putting that pressure.
It's not easy playing Jan Nepomniachtchi. He's such a speed demon. And here, I think strategically, white doesn't really want to trade on e6, and that's why knight d2 is played. If you take on f4, that's a blunder because rook e7 check will happen first. Even if knight takes d4, have that pawn. We already saw Jan gobble a pawn on d4 in the first game. It wasn't working out well for him. He's certainly not going to take it here.
Yeah, I don't think so. Why not just a move like bishop to d7, develop the bishop, follow up with rook to e8, and I think black is doing absolutely fine. And there we go, bishop to e7. So I don't know, Magnus seemed to be having a slight initiative, but Jan has done a great job at neutralizing it.
Jan has been very steady today, and with a 1-point lead right now, the onus is on Magnus Carlsen to strike back at some moment. But Jan is looking relaxed. I saw the featured chat saying that, but it's true. He's leaning back in his chair, he's doing the rock away, and he's also developing his pieces and just bringing his rook to the center.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I guess Jan also knows that he doesn't have a whole lot to lose against Magnus. Magnus, of course, is the hefty favorite. So, you know, if he wins, that'd be fantastic. If he loses, you know, it happens. You know, you just move on. So I guess there's not a whole lot of pressure on him. He knows what it takes to beat Magnus. He's beaten Magnus, if I believe like 4 times in classical chess, so he knows what he has to do.
That's correct. And even though the World Championship didn't go his way, I think that it was great preparation for him. It was a great experience. And a second World Championship didn't go his way. But it's clear that he's improving in many different areas of the game. And one of them is being increasingly solid, playing the opening like the Petrov. And he maintains in this one an equal position. And I don't see much of anything here, Benjamin. Jan, he may have bent in the first game, but he's showing that he is not going to break.
Yeah, for sure. Rook e8, good move, bring the rook into the game. Now Magnus finally defends the pawn as knight takes d4 was threatened. So let's see what Jan is going to do here. Maybe like knight g5, offer the trade of rooks, trade everything off, and black should be doing absolutely fine in that endgame. That being said, though, if all the rooks come off, white can perhaps hope for a very, very small edge, as you have the potential outside passer. You also have your pawns on dark squares, and we have light square bishops on the board.
Very, very instructive points there. Everyone, please take note of what Benjamin just said, that because white can create an outside pass pawn, certain endgames will be very nice, especially king and pawn endgames, because black will be distracted towards the flank, and then white can operate more in the center, and the light square bishops clearly favor white because of those light square pawns, which means, 1, that white can attack black's pawns, and 2, black's bishop is restricted. So Magnus might be counting on that, but I also wouldn't be surprised if one of them offers a draw in the next couple moves as all the rooks come off the board. It would take a big mistake for someone to lose this game.
Yeah, so we see knight d8, rook e8. Okay, so here Magnus is going to trade, go king f2, and there we have the move h4, Robert. He wants to create that outside passer. I guess now you go g3. Jan isn't too eager to trade. Like we said, that outside passer will give white some very small chances, but knight f7 on the board, a very solid move. I think he's headed to d6, followed by bishop g6. And so his knight can potentially go to f5. This should be a comfortable hold for Jan, I think.
It should be, but we've said that so many times when Magnus Carlsen is playing, someone should make a draw. It looks like Jan just offered a draw, and Magnus declined it by playing take on g5. So a draw was offered, Magnus not interested, and this still looks very level.
Bishop g6, a nice move here by Jan. The pawn on g5 was under attack, but for the moment you cannot take it as your bishop on d3 is hanging. And if you trade on g6 first, well, then the king on g6 defends the pawn. So nice move. It puts the bishop on a more active diagonal. We see the trade here. Robert, I think this one is going to end in a draw pretty soon. The position is completely symmetrical.
There's nothing to attack, right? The knight on d6 protects the b7 pawn. If the knight comes to c4 for black, well, you can play b3. And the king is marching toward the center. Let me ask you, Benjamin. Did Magnus decline because he might want the quicker time controls where he feels like he's even more of a favorite? Do you think he's sort of wasting some match clock even in just the first few games?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. On the other hand, though, he is behind, so he should want more games in a match. I would think from Jan's perspective, a draw, like milking out the clock here, is not a bad idea. Again, you get less games in the match. So I think Magnus perhaps should resign himself to a draw here sooner rather than later.
There's just nothing to be done, right? The knight on e5 protects g4. The knight that was on e4 protected g5. There's nothing to go after here. I think both players, they know it's a draw, and yet Magnus, he always finds some chances. Look at this, c5. Does he want king d3, king c3, b4? It's not going to happen, right? There's no way. And he had to move his knight back because knight takes c5 was a threat there. So is Magnus really playing for a win here, or is he just shuffling about?
Yeah, I don't know what to make of this move knight c3 though. I don't know why Jan didn't just go back to f6. It looked very natural. Now Magnus can play the move knight f2, cutting off the return to the e4 square. Jan, however, can go knight e2 to b4, so he's still doing absolutely fine, but I don't know, like, the thing with Magnus is that the evil bar is always in the middle, but at some point it slowly but surely is going to creep up.
That's because the eval board doesn't take into context how difficult it feels to play a position. A big issue right now for Magnus is he would love to attack the a5 pawn, but his knight doesn't have a single square in the board where it can attack it from.
Oh, knight takes c5, Robert. Knight takes c5.
Oh, was there knight takes? No, there was not even knight takes c6 there. So that was a miss by both of them.
Real quick, knight takes c5 was a big opportunity for Jan. In case you win the knight, and knight takes c6, there's knight e4.
Ooh. So somehow the EVA bar says that's not even that impressive regardless. So knight takes c5 still maybe had drawing chances, but you can't miss those. If you're Magnus, you can't allow it. And if you're Jan, you need to find that moment.
Exactly. Now we see a trade on b4. Jan trades, and I think this is just headed for a draw. The king goes to c7, and there's nothing for either side to do. So, okay, if you're Jan here, do you just milk out the clock?